The Sahara hasn't always been a desert. At one time it was a savanna. Now, I could cite a bunch of statistics about rainfall, but just look at this satellite photo of Africa. That's all sand and rock. But 7,000 years ago, it was a very different story. There are cave drawings from that period featuring cows and elephants. It was a grassland. But those pictures of cows eventually gave way to pictures of camels. The weather changed, the rain slowed and then stopped, and the desert took over. We know about the Sahara's ancient history because of those small, scattered cave paintings. But for more recent history, for the story of man's place in the desert, we have towns like this one, though we may not have it for very long. Michael Hunovich was planning a trip through Mauritania through the thick of the Sahara Desert when he found something worth checking out.
I went to my local library looking for a guidebook on Mauritania, which they didn't have. But they had one on West Africa, and it had maybe 2 pages dedicated to Mauritania. And there it was, the forgotten libraries of the Sahara. What can possibly sound more romantic than that?
The guidebook was talking about this town, Chinguetti, and the forgotten libraries there, which are a local treasure. Back in the 13th century, the town was a major stop for caravans hauling wool, barley, dates, ivory, ostrich feathers, gold, and slaves along the well-worn trade route. And apparently there are written records of this.
They describe the caravans coming in and out of the city back in the day, some of them mentioning tens of thousands of camels daily.
Those records are just one part of the forgotten libraries, because as all the goods passed through Chinguetti over the centuries, as did knowledge. Scholars here collected books on math, language, astronomy and law. A mosque was built, and some of the earliest Quranic texts found their way to these libraries. Chinguetti became known far and wide as an oasis for commerce and learning in a vast and hostile desert. But 8 centuries later, Michael arrived to find a very different place.
Chinguetti feels like a ghost town, and it's really hard to believe that supposedly 4,000 people live there. I am not sure what they do. Some of them work in the libraries. Some of them work in the local schools for children called madaris or madrasas.
The libraries are now what puts Chinguetti on most maps, and they've earned it a place on UNESCO's list of World Heritage Sites. Day to day though, it's up to the small army of librarians to protect the books and share their knowledge with visitors.
There are librarians who are kind enough to show you the books, many of which are centuries old. The librarians handle the books using gloves, but you get the impression that it's not the safest way, and indeed many of the books are literally falling apart.
And sadly, that might be an apt metaphor for Chinguetti itself. The librarians do their best to keep the town going, but they get little help from the Mauritanian government, which has its hands full dealing with Al-Qaeda factions within its borders. And most importantly, they must fight the desert, which is forever encroaching on the town. Michael left Chinguetti with a sense of impermanence weighing on him.
No one knows how much longer the libraries will stand, as the population is dwindling, the state of the books is deteriorating, and the sand is slowly taking over the town.
As cities continue to grow, small villages and towns like Chinguetti are disappearing at a rapid rate, alongside the last nomadic tribes who live in these spaces. Watch this episode to find out more. Photographers have been taking pictures of disappearing cultures since the early 1900s, when Edward S. Curtis started documenting some American Indian tribes before their traditional way of life disappeared completely. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to Seeker Stories.